Hey, my name is TJ. I'm a young person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't had a drink or a drug since August 9th, 2016. I'm here hosting the Recovery Matters podcast with...
Mark, and I am an old person and have been in recovery for over 3 decades now. April 15th, 1992 to be precise.
So, I first met you downstairs at the Recovery Community Center.
Yes, you did.
And we connected over music.
Yep.
That was one of the first things that we shared a connection with. And like I was telling you about some of my concert stories, you're telling me about your concert stories. I think over the course of like 6 months or so, I learned more about you every time we met and we connected and stuff. And that's why I wanted to have you on today. So tell me about life growing up.
I grew up in Simsbury, Connecticut. Getting away with anything in my neighborhood was impossible.
Okay.
Because the whole neighborhood, everybody was the same age and all the neighbors knew each other. So even if my mother wasn't watching what was going on, somebody over here was, somebody over here was, somebody over here was. You got away with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And we had so many kids my age that they had to send 3 school buses to my neighborhood to pick up all the kids for school in the morning.
Wow.
And I was kind of an outcast because I had curly hair.
Okay.
I had freckles. And I was really picked on a lot when I was a kid until I obviously had a growing spurt, and that's when it stopped.
Okay. And then when were you introduced to drugs and alcohol?
Well, what happened in high school is that I was a super jock, and so I just did all the sports and everything. And I got into high school, and I consider that to be the most difficult part of my life, was what was going on there. And everything was cliques.
Yes.
You went into this clique, you went into this clique, you went into that clique, and I went into the jock clique because that's what I was, and I hung out with them and I ate lunch with them and all that. And then one day I was coming down the stairs and my fellow players had, we'll call them long hair, pinned up against the wall. Long hair back then was, on a male, was not sissy and everything else. And they were having fun with him and wanted me to join in on the festivities, and I did not. And I instead stood up for the guy because of my past. And that immediately, oh, you're no good. So I went to lunch after that, and I sat down with all the players, and they all stood up and walked away. And then the rest of their girlfriends and stuff were all laughing at me and all that. And I said, boy, this sucks.
Yeah. And
then the person that I stood up for next day comes up to me, and he's like, wow, thanks a lot for doing that. He said, come on, I got some friends you want to meet. And I didn't look anything like him.
Okay.
Still, jock attire and everything else. And they were very accepting people. And that individual, I was best man in his wedding, and we're still great friends to this day.
That's really cool, dude.
He's the one that turned me into music.
Okay.
And that was the start of all that. And then he turned me on to Hendrix.
Yep.
And that was my introduction to marijuana. And it all went downhill pretty quickly after that.
Okay.
Actually, drinking was the first thing I experienced. I just fell in love with it the second I did it. And I felt that it was accepted because of my family. It was Irish-Scottish family, and every family get-together and everything else was nothing but a party. And being a product of the 70s, pretty much everything was available to us back then, drug-wise. I mean, just everything was all over the place. So I got to sample barbiturates, amphetamines, and weed, of course, LSD, all that good stuff.
Alcohol was your favorite?
Well, that was my drug of choice until it wasn't a choice.
Okay. I like that.
Best way to put it.
Yeah. I always say drug of preference. Like, I preferred heroin, but I'll settle on anything. Yep. Did you go off to college?
No.
Okay. So you stayed home.
I went into trade school because
Okay.
cars, automobiles are in my DNA.
Yep. So go through high school, go to trade school,
Yep.
Getting into life, partying picks up, right?
It was pretty constant at that point, and my knowledge of cars, I just got further and further into it and got more and more curious about stuff and got really good at everything with cars. And then I got a little sick of working on cars, having to go home and being all greasy and stuff. It was very hard to get clean, and I went into the service end of the business.
Okay.
where I'm actually dealing with the customers. And, I didn't think twice about it when I got into it. But, in retrospect, when you're dealing with people and trying to get them to part with their money and put it into something that they really don't want to put money into, because a car is turn the key, put gas in it, and go, period. Yep. After that, they don't want to know anything. And you call them up and tell them they need a $3,000 back then cylinder head job on their BMW. They were a little upset. Obviously, that's a $10,000 job now. But, it was very stressful. I didn't have that on-off switch. I fell even worse into drinking, trying to drink it away. And my girlfriend at the time just said, you started drinking 3 times what you were before that.
And that's when
I was just getting out of control. Yeah.
Did you realize you had a problem yet?
Oh, hell no. It's everything around me. It wasn't me.
Mm-hmm. It was my manager. It's my girl.
Yeah. My best friends, when things started getting really bad, they just disowned me. That's incorrect. They did not disown me. I found out later they just didn't want to associate with me for the simple reason they didn't want to watch me self-destruct anymore.
Mm-hmm. Nowadays, we call that boundaries, right? And
they cut off all communication with me. They just, no, we're not doing this. And of course, the inner demon in you goes, okay, well, that's their problem. Yep. I'll just find new friends, and ones that, of course, are enablers.
Yep.
So this is what I'm going to be hanging out with now.
And it really took off.
Yeah, it just got worse and worse and worse, and I didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also a lot more accepted nowadays, too, like with substance use and stuff like that. And I think culture has kind of changed a little bit, too. Where so I look at stuff with my family and all that, and for me, I can look back and be like, all right, I'm going to take a break from this person, as opposed to you're dead to me kind of thing. Right? Where hey, they're off right now. I can't be around them. It's too much, right? Because what it's like dealing with people when they're off the rails, and it's
yeah. Well, my friends even went there because they tried to intervene.
Okay.
And unless you're ready to quit,
yes,
that's just they might as well just talk to a brick wall.
Yes.
And I did not listen to it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. When was the first time you realized it was a problem for you?
My last boss just came up to me and told me straight up. He said, your work is suffering, and I'm going to have to let you go unless you straighten out.
Okay.
And I kind of was motherfucking him at first. And he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about kind of thing. And then
yep.
And I just started thinking about it. And, I thought about it. I never drank on the job.
Okay.
Which is something I never did. But I had these thoughts, this is all in retrospect. And then I would actually think that walking into the package store and buying my beer at the time and leaving with it, and everything's all fine, and crack open that first one, and that first gulp, those thoughts are gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided what I'll do is I'll start self-regulating.
Okay.
So I'll buy a 6-pack of beer, and I'll only drink 3 of them. And then I'll drink 3 tomorrow. And then I went to the refrigerator to get the 3rd one, and there's only 1 left. I said, this is strange, because I literally did not remember drinking the other 2 or the other 3 at that point. So this is nuts. And of course, since there's only 1 left, it's kind of lonely there, so I might as well drink that one too.
Yeah.
And so the next day, this is the way somebody that rationalizes this insane behavior. Oh, I see the problem. I was buying 12-ounce cans. I'll just buy the 16-ounce cans. That'll solve this problem.
Yep.
Same exact thing happened. Went for the 3rd one, and there's only 1 left. And then, of course, I went to the 24-ounce ones.
Yep.
But then, even buying the 24s, I'm just like, what the hell are you doing?
Yep.
Kind of thing. But it didn't really have much effect. And what I started doing was, I said, okay, I'll just stick to a 6-pack.
Okay.
And that was pretty effective, unless I went to a bar. If I went
Yep.
to a bar, I was screwed because then I just hit shots.
And boom,
Yeah, and the same thing happened.
off to the races.
Yep,
Yep. Driving drunk, everything.
all the time.
Yep. Tell me about getting into recovery.
Well, I was a blackout drunk,
Okay.
and that's not a good thing. And even some of my enablers didn't want to be with me because of the way I got when I was in a blackout drunk stage.
Yep.
And I ended up killing somebody
Okay.
because of this, and that's what I went to prison for.
Mm-hmm.
But just the reality of being responsible for that was just beyond devastating.
Yep.
And I was just like, whoa. This is just nuts. I didn't remember doing anything leading up to it or anything. And it was just such a shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was such a bad alcoholic at that point that I had to drink
Yes.
because I was starting to get the shakes and everything. And,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how bad this was. And I just knew I had to do something at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into a detox and got that out of my system. But then it's like, okay, what now?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't, I had no grasp of anything of what sober living is going to be or anything like that. And some of my friends that had distanced themselves from me stepped right back in.
Nice.
And they were right there. And okay, this is what we got to do now. And, the judicial system stepped in at that point.
Yep.
And so I went off to jail.
Okay.
And then once I was in jail, I got a job in the counseling area. And one of the counselors there was a drug counselor. And he really liked me. Him and I got along real well. He was having some car issues, and I kind of helped him out with that. And he leapfrogged me into a step group with 3 guys that came in from the street.
Yep.
And then there were 3 inmates. So there were just 6 of us in this step meeting. And somehow he arranged for us to have 2 hours together once a week. In the first hour, we would just, bullshit about this, that, and the other thing. And then the second hour was time to get down to business. It was a step group, so it got my head in the right place.
And you knew you wanted long-term sustained recovery sitting in that room.
Well, the big thing to me was one of the guys that was not my sponsor. He said he had 20-something years at that point. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. I couldn't even, I'm like 2 months sober, 3 months, I think, at that point when I got into that group. It happened that fast with this guy.
Yeah, I talked to my sponsor. He used to do a lot of commitments like that. And he always talked about the way he would feel connecting with people, because it's like being who we are today, I could make that connection with you. I don't see you for what had happened, right? Because I made a lot of bad mistakes, when I was drinking, right? And that could have easily been really any of us, right? In a moment, right? That could have happened. So he would go in there and he would talk with these guys, and he would listen to them, and they would say, well, they said and it's like, you don't even know what you did, right? You have not, that's not who you are, right? That's not who you are, right? And that connection that we have with people who are going through it, right? And it's the same thing, I meet a newcomer guy, and I got sober at 22, right? And when somebody comes in, they're 20 years old, and you could tell they're looking around the room like this, and they have no idea what's going on. And you sit with them, and they're like, hey, what's up? And you make that connection, and they're talking to you. You're like, oh yeah, dude, I got sober when I was 22. And they're like, and you're still sober? And it's like, yeah, and they're like, wow, maybe this is possible for me, right? And they have that moment of humanity in between 2 individuals that's I might be okay. If I continue this recovery stuff, I might make it, I might be okay. And you shared something similar to that, right? Where you're connecting with people. And it's really what shapes us, right? Do you think you would have been where you were without these guys?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, that was essential. That it was a very, very serious step meeting.
Yep.
And when you get to the amends and everything that you're doing in there, it helped me discover that it took me a long time, 20 years, 19 to be precise, to get as bad as I was.
Yep.
And it's not going to be undone in 3 months. Yes, you're sober now. And they had a term for it. They called it a dry drunk.
Yep.
So your mind is still messed up, but we can work on that. And they did. When it's such a small group, they see where the big flaw is and how we can affect change there.
Yeah.
So yes, overall, the AA groups in the prison, I did not go to at that point.
Yep.
And when I left there, I had kept one of them on my visiting list, and then a friend had another guy there that was his sponsor, and he went on the visiting list. And we just arranged so that the visits came the same day, and the guys came in together, and we continued this.
That's really
we
cool.
were sneaky. Well, this is the only way we could do it.
Yeah. But you made it work.
Well, I got involved in AA in the I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay.
The corrections decided that addiction recovery was not a priority anymore. And I went through a program that it was a very extensive rehabilitation program that was run by ex-addicts and everything. And then mental health took over the whole department, and these people were removed, and they had their own way that they were going to do things. And they came to me and said, well, you need to go through this, and this program. It was called a step, I think they had steps or phases. I forget what they called it.
Yeah.
Phase 1, phase 2, step 1. They were big programs. And I looked at the guy and I said, well, I already did all that. And, oh, we don't recognize that anymore, so you got to do this now.
Of course.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they required me to keep going to AA meetings. And then I did that faithfully. And we had some speakers come in that had very, very colorful pasts. And they came back to the block. And the inmates came back to the block and they started talking about this, and they were using their name. And I checked them in the block. I said, there's a reason they call it anonymous. That's supposed to stay in that room. And then it happened again. And I called them out in the middle of the meeting. And I was thrown out of the meeting for being disruptive, because it was more important that people be attending this. And obviously they're not getting it. So I was taking it a lot more seriously than they were.
Yes.
And they just let it go.
Okay.
But I didn't know it was still in there. They just put me as uncooperative and all this other, and it reared its head when I was getting ready to discharge.
Okay.
That was the new philosophy of DOC, is they felt that we'll give you treatment at the end of your sentence, right when you're going to hit the street, because that's when it'll be most effective. And anybody that's an addict knows that is just completely asinine.
Yes, you literally need treatment consistently.
But so I got into, I almost didn't get out of Osborne because of it. And then
Okay.
the guy was lying to me about it. He just said, well, you can start the program here, and then we'll allow you to transfer to a lower level. And anybody involved in corrections will know, if you start something one place, you're going to finish it there.
Yep.
You're not going to continue it elsewhere. So that was lie number 8,400 and whatever that they dished me.
Okay.
But once I got into the level 2, they forced me into the program again.
Yep.
It was in my file. You're not going to get a halfway house unless you do this. It was a big stick. So, all right, I'll play this game.
Tell me about getting out and wanting to stay sober.
The big thing there was when I went into this group, okay, this level,
Yep.
and the guy's telling me, well, what was going on in your life to make you drink? I did the questionnaire and all that, and I said it's exactly what I said. I just drank and I fell in love with it. So, well, you had to have something else going on. Were you abused as a child? No, I just fell in love with it. And he never found that acceptable. He didn't believe me. But that's the truth. That's exactly how this happened. That kind of gave me a ugh.
Yeah. And you're
about the
like,
program. Everything's starting to leave me a really bad taste in my mouth about all that.
hmm
So we'll go back to where you were about, you said maintaining my recovery.
yeah. So getting out, and maintaining your recovery. What was that like?
See, at that point, I was just celebrated 30 years of
Okay.
recovery and really wasn't an issue. I did not have the desire, the cravings, any compulsions, or anything to use.
hmm
Because at that point, I had developed what I often tell people here is I have a tool belt.
hmm
Because it's not one thing that's going to keep me sober.
Yep.
It's a collection of all kinds of things that I have. It's these friends that I made amends with, and they're now back in my camp, but are scared shitless that I'm out and all of this is available. But we never talked about that when I was actually in there, that all of this stuff was available to me in there, and I did not use.
Yep.
So, but we let that go, and I ended up in a sober house, which I didn't need, so I thought. But here's Mark walking down Main Street in Middletown, looking over at a bar going, I can go in there and not drink and I'll be all right. And then it was, if anybody's seen the Animal House with the devil
Yes.
and the angel, the angel was actually over here, but he was a very smart talking sponsor just going, Mark, there's only one reason you'd be going in that bar, and that's to drink. And it caught me.
Yep.
And just the stupid thinking or the lapse or the complacency, whatever you want to call it. And it's just literally a slap in the face.
Yep.
You think you're all right, but you're not.
Yep.
You know, I did not act on it. I did not walk in that door. And it taught me something. Okay, the temptation is there, and you have to be leery of this. And then it shook me, though, that I had that thought. And that's a good shake.
Yes.
It's, oh, shit, what's going on here? And I got back to my sober house, and the manager is right there. And he assessed the situation really quickly. Hey, want to go to a meeting tonight? Boom. And I started going every night with him.
Nice.
No AA meetings, just NA, but it worked. And it didn't matter anyway.
Tell me a little bit about your life today.
It's good. I'm able to shake things off much better than I used to. It was just a disaster week. I mean, from every aspect. I had a job lined up, fell through. Lost all my EBT money. When I was coming back from dealing with where I thought I'd lost it, I wasn't watching where I was going. Took a trip. And that's not something you want to be doing at my age, and especially my height, since, you know, it's the old redwood going down. So, you know, it's just one thing after another, and I was able to shake it off.
Nice.
Not to give Taylor Swift a plug, but, you know, and just, okay, it's Sunday, and that's what I did. I watched the Yukon women,
Yep.
and woke up Monday morning, new week. Let's
Yep.
start again. New mindset.
Yep.
How do you start with a new mindset? Up, go down, get a roast beef sandwich.
There you go.
Reward yourself for being sober.
Yes, sir.